The Reghed Nomads add a much-needed sense of environment to Icewind Dale, making the icy tundra a little less lonely at times, which can be both a blessing and a curse. The implementation of these tribal people is a double-edged sword, which I'll talk about soon. I think it can definitely be fun to play this group of people. For me, running tribes of people are enjoyable due to their differing traditions. Like, I don't always get to play a tribalist in comparison to a Waterdeep noble, because I know how to play a noble. I don't know how to play a tribalist. It's a fun challenge. Hello, welcome to another episode of Icewind Dale, where you can watch a scrawny boy talk about his nerd game. So, something that sticks out to me is that these tribes of people don't show up in random encounters. I may be wrong, but I checked for like 5 minutes throughout the entire book where any random encounters can be found, and I could not find them anywhere. The book presents their information a little loosely, but to find them, the DM has to place them somewhere. A random rumour could guide the party to a camp, but the module doesn't put any of them in any specific place due to them moving a lot. Therefore, it's up to you where the camps are, due to the nomads constantly being on the move. I would personally make them show up in random encounters, maybe hunting deer and acting a little averted to the party before walking back to camp. I don't think that they'd accept guiding a party to their camp for the sake of them being cautious of what they would do. They don't know if the party's going to come to the camp and then murder everyone with a 9th level spell. So therefore, they're not taking that risk. They've learned to survive for so long because they're smart people in terms of their practicality in the wilds. Now, this is where the tribe begins to feel like they belong. The module provides a map to use for the tribe, which is pretty neat. However, I think that busting this out whenever they go to any tribe can result in them thinking the 4 different types of tribes are like uniform, you know, same tent patterns, same exact amount of important figures, etc. No need to slap that map down until they have either got into combat or they want to start doing some stealth, they want to do some espionage, something like that, so that you can show them the layout of the buildings. And if they try to do that again in a second location, I'd recommend a more narrative approach to this. Just for the sake of immersion. They don't exactly want to see the same set of tents every single time they go to a Reghed camp, because they're going to think that they're all working together, which is most certainly not true. In any case, running the place is fairly simple, just perhaps emphasize that there are a lot of somewhat strong-looking people here. Early game, they could kick the party's ass royally, because they have some very powerful people. There's the stat box for like gladiators and druids and frickin' everything else in between, which is scary as hell for a party to deal with, especially early game. I had an encounter in my Curse of Strahd game where it was a single druid and a bunch of twig and needle blights, and that druid was a pain in the goddamn ass because everyone had to keep hitting the twig blights and the needle blights, and the druid got to run around just thunder waving over and over. And yeah, they're like a 3rd level spellcaster. They're still very powerful in comparison to the party. Again, especially early game. A party may want to sneak around to see what they can find, steal, which is pretty available to them due to the lack of decent passive perception on most of the tribalists. The closest they're going to get with that is either the chieftains / kings and queens, or the druids around. And maybe a gladiator or two. It just depends. The passive perceptions of the overall group, they're not great, which means the party can stealth around there somewhat easily if they have a rogue with expertise in stealth, where if you're a rogue, you should have expertise in stealth. I played a rogue who didn't even have proficiency in it. They were a massive furbolg dude who would like a courier, and they just had like bunches upon bunches of various items just all over and around them. According to the book, there is a 1 to 6 chance of the tribe king or queen being there in place of the chieftain that you can roll. I think that you should make that a half, to be honest. Just a roll of a d4, 1 or 2 they're not there, 2, 3 or 4 they are there. Sure, it's realistic to have them not show up most of the time, but it can be fun to come across a king or queen of the tribe more often. I definitely would enjoy playing a king or queen that is much more elaborated on in comparison to just, here's a chieftain, because you might have to improvise that, whereas the kings and queens are all sorted out for you. They have their stat blocks right there, they have all their ideals, they have what they do, and they're all somewhat interesting to me. Let's talk about those. Something I want to touch on is the king and queens of each tribe that the party may encounter, because not only do they have their own custom stat blocks, but they're also very cool people. I like these stat blocks. They're all very simple. The features don't go beyond 3, maybe 4, including like attacks, so they're easy for a DM to manage. It can make them more fun to do, considering their roleplay decisions more than, you know, what spell out of the 5,000 in the list they should choose from. I generally stay away from too many spellcasters in my games in terms of NPCs. It can slow down combat sometimes. Normally there's just the one. And I've gotten a couple tricks down, like giving smaller guys like a once-a-day small spellcast and a couple of rituals to do and stuff like that, just for the sake of roleplay and the occasional cool thing. But mostly I do stick to like one spellcaster in an encounter at a time for my Onis, because then outside of my turns in the initiative when I'm running a game, I can look at those spells and decide what I think would suit the situation. So, Gunvald Hallragsson is the first, and his stat block's great. I apologise if I butchered the hell out of that name. Some of the names in this are very hard to pronounce. They're probably in the pronunciation guide, but yeah. This dude has low AC but decent hit points, a good combination, and a great potential for damage dealing. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned, I think I started doing it with the, maybe the Grey Render, like they had too high AC and too low hit points. You want people to hit more, so that's why this Gunvald fellow's stat block is right. And he also has a great potential for damage dealing. He has a big multi-attack. His once a turn bonus D12 damage is pretty neat too. Easy to understand, gives him more power. And yeah, that's a neat thing, occasionally adding a D12 to damage. And that's his main shtick. He has Indomitable, I think, but other than that, that's his thing. It'll be difficult to take down due to his Indomitable feature, but overall, nothing to change here. I think it's quite perfect. Especially if he is fighting with minions, which he should be, because if you're a king or queen, you're going to be fighting with more than just yourself. Jarund Elkhard is the chat version of Gunvald, getting more overall damage, AC, and hit points. He only has one feature, and it's passive, so you can focus on hitting very hard with this guy. His shield is some neat flavour. He can attack with it, pushing the target 5 feet, and allowing an ally to hit him if they come close. This is a nice leader feature. Jarund could kind of like bash a player into one of his allies, and his allies get a free swing. That's nice. I like it. And it makes sense for a leader, right? That they'd be able to give their allies attacks. I like when leaders do that. It makes them feel like they're controlling the fight. Here's the hardest one for me to pronounce, maybe, I don't know, the last one. So there's Bjornhild Slovigsdottir. It's quite possibly the most badass one for a number of different reasons. For one, saber-toothed tiger. You can see how badass she is there. She has an image and everything. This game likes her the most in comparison to everyone else. Her AC is pretty low. Her hit points are quite high, which already makes me as a DM very happy. And she has 3 quote-unquote smites. They function similar to the Divine Smite feature. Once you've hit, you can do it. That do 2d10 cold damage, so slightly better than a smite, but she can't, like, upcast or whatever. Plus, she's rocking a great axe, and with that +4 to strength, we'll be dealing insane damage each turn. I think the flavour of her is great as well. The book specifies, like, it's rare for a queen to be there, but, like, her husband died and she took the place, and now she's badass as hell and no one opposes her. You go, girl. Right, no, this one's the hardest. Isar Kronenstrom is the weirdo of the 4. A full-on savage who hunts people because it's fun. It's reflected in his stats very well if you take a look. He has the highest hit points and AC out of all of the kings and queens, and deals immense damage to creatures that are isolated. Blood Frenzy, which gives him advantage on attacks on anyone who doesn't have all their hit points, which is often in a D&D game. And the extra 2d12 damage on each attack, if they're attacking someone with no allies within 10 feet of them, incentivizes a shove every now and again to get that insane damage on his 3-attack multi-attack. Once you do that, the party will key on to kind of how that works. Why did he have to push them first? That sort of thing. Oh, it's probably proximity. Even with just such a simple ability, that can make the party try and think around it. The strategy with this guy is for the party to gang up on him, so make sure that that's difficult to achieve in the first round or 2 of combat. They balance that 2d12 that he gets on isolated creatures by him just having a sickle, which is great, I think. just dealing a d4 plus 3 if they're not alone is cool. It emphasizes that he works best in this certain field. He is very hard to take down, however. I think out of all the people, this guy should show up with less minions, because once they're dead, he can't stay in the fight for too long, because that's going to be a very awful thing. So it's going to be a very fast battle and very intense if they fight this guy due to this feature. Overall, I like these guys. The concepts just need a little tweaking to make it feel better. I wouldn't put these folk too far out of 10 towns, not a day or two out, because they subtract from the feeling of isolation that Icewind Dale wants. If the party is all the way on the other side of the world to 10 towns, basically, finding a Reghed tribe is going to definitely make it feel a little less lonely. A quick announcement, this series may end in a few episodes. Due to me having slowly found the module to not be that fun, I stopped running it a couple of weeks ago. I still have advice to give, but I feel as though I shouldn't keep giving advice for a module I don't have passion for. And plus my well of knowledge of this thing is going to dry up as I go along, because I won't have experience on it. Instead, in maybe a month or two, depending, I will probably be making a switch to talking about Tomb of Annihilation. If you'd like to talk about Icewind Dale more or anything else, come onto our Discord. The link is in the description. So thank you for watching me ramble, and I'll see you soon. Hopefully my advice helped. See ya!